Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Graham Glass. I'm the CEO and founder of Cypher Learning, and I'm based here in sunny California. So it's quite early my time, but welcome to everyone else in Upstart. I'm honored to be here. Cypher Learning, we provide a cloud-hosted learning platform that's used by schools and universities and businesses around the world. I think it's in about 100 countries. You might have heard of our product Neo for schools and universities, or a product Matrix for businesses. But what I'm going to do today, I've got a 20-minute presentation talking about the past, present, and future of learning platforms. Now, a lot of people maybe in their past have used a learning management system, aka LMS, but you might not be aware of all the various innovations and future directions of said platforms. So I'm going to focus on what's going on in the exciting world of learning platforms. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to refer to the presentation now, and we're going to take a look first at the past of learning management systems. When I describe people what a learning platform is, I normally say, at its heart, it's the ability for someone to create a course on the web and then for somebody else to take that course, which sounds super simple, but it's much more complicated than that. People normally want reporting and analytics and all kinds of additional features, but at the heart, it's all about course creation and enrollment. So what I'm showing you as a series of pictures is kind of what this functionality looks like in a typical learning platform. So what you're seeing here is what you might think of as the learner dashboard. So you go into a learning management system and you see a collection of tiles, which are the courses that you are enrolled in. And if you dive into one of these courses, what you'll typically see is a set of modules corresponding to the lessons within the course. And those modules might have a certain amount of time to complete them, a little introduction, and you'll see in the right-hand side your progress through the course. And all of what I'm showing you is pretty standard learning platform functionality that might have been fairly similar, 5 years ago. And once you've completed a course, a lot of these systems will give you either something like a certificate of completion that either you can put up on your wall or you can show your employer. So that's kind of like the past of learning management systems. That's the kind of thing that if you had taken a course 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you might have seen. So now let's take a look at the present of learning platforms. So there's a lot of quite cool innovations going on in the current learning systems. This is actually a screenshot of our Matrix product for businesses. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is something called automation. So I've taught thousands of people either at higher education. I used to teach computer science at University of Texas at Dallas, or in the world of business. And I usually think of when you teach a course, you're taking someone through a scripted learning journey. So when you create a course, you might want to script it and say, well, firstly, when you complete the first module, I want to pop up like a congratulations message. And then when they complete the second module, I want to give them some points and badges. And if they're doing really well, I want to unveil some advanced material. But if they're doing poorly, I want to show some remedial material. So the general idea of automation is that you can sprinkle these rules throughout your course and you can control the learning journey. So in this particular screenshot, what I'm saying is when you complete a particular course, I want to perform one or more of these following actions. So a very common one would be when you complete the course, get a certificate of completion, but there's a lot more that you can do. You also might have heard of something called gamification. Now, gamification is not a game per se. It's the ability to define various levels of progress, points associated with those levels, and then award people points and badges as they achieve certain milestones throughout your course. So in this particular screenshot, I've got a game called Participation. I've got levels like beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And then I can use automation to determine when you get points and when you get badges. So for example, I can say when you join the course, you get 20 points. When you do really well in the quiz, you get 30 points. When you complete module 2, you get a badge. So you can have quite fine-grained resolution on when you get these points and badges. And one of the things that's really good fun is you can have these awards pop up in the middle of the course. So we're really into the idea that we want to surprise and delight users when they take a course. So for example, if you're using our Neo system in university, you might arrange things so that when you finish a particular section and you get points, they just pop up right here. So I can see from my instructor called Julie Andrews, hey, you got 5 points. And when you're a learner and you see stuff like this, it really is definitely gives you motivation and encouragement. Another thing which is becoming more and more popular is social learning. So you don't necessarily just want to say, hey, the only way that you learn in this course is by clicking through various screens and taking quizzes, etc. You might also want to organize some informal learning groups. So for example, you could set up a group of people who are really good at design, and you can use automation to say when somebody enrolls in the course, automatically, simultaneously put them into this group. And within that group, that's where they can do social networking. They can have their own news feed. They can share resources as an adjunct to the actual formal course. So social learning, especially powered by automation, it's becoming increasingly popular. Another thing which is really important is something called competency-based learning. And this is actually very popular in businesses who want to have a fine-grained resolution of the concepts that their learners are either getting or not getting, but it's also becoming increasingly popular in K through 20. So I'm going to give you a few examples of this, and this is very important because it ties into what's coming next in terms of the future of learning platforms. So in this particular case, what I did is I created a course and I connected it with a couple of competency groups, one called Design Basics and one called Branding. And if you look in the Design Basics, you'll see that there's a hierarchy of competencies representing individual pieces of knowledge that you want the student to master when you take the course. So I'm going to be teaching alignment, designing logos, white space and shape as part of the course. Once you've aligned the course with these competencies, what you can do is you can start tagging the assessments with the competencies that they are measuring, and you can tag the resources with the competencies that they are teaching. And by doing this tagging process, you can kind of do an automatic coverage analysis of the course to make sure it's covering what it's meant to cover. And in real time, you can see a grid that shows you the measured competencies of all the learners in the course. And as an educator, this is really fantastic. It means that when I'm giving a course, it's not just a question about, oh, Johnny's got a B+. I can say, oh no, Johnny is falling behind in grid theory, but he's doing really, really well in designing logos. So you get this very fine-grained map within the course of the strengths and weaknesses conceptually of the learners. And then what you can do is you can provide an aggregated view across courses. So for example, when someone goes into the learning dashboard, they can click on Design Basics, and this is showing them taking all the measurements of all these competencies across all of the courses that you've ever taken. Here is your current level of mastery for these competencies. So competencies is almost like a currency of knowledge, and you can take great advantage of competencies, as I'm going to show you in a few minutes. One last thing I want to mention is that at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the things that we felt was there's going to be a lot of people who used to learn in a live environment, like in a classroom. Now they're going to be working from home or from their office. And a lot of these learning platforms do not provide a very good sense of activity or community. You just get this boring screen that never changes. So we added something called activity display. So in this particular case, you'll notice that on 2 of the courses, business strategies on the left and design patterns, there's a little green flashing dot. And the general idea is that the more activity there is, the bigger and faster those dots are going to flash. So that's an example of the present day learning platforms, but how we can use technology to create a sense of activity and community within the learning platform. And if I go into a particular course, we can actually show little flashing lights on the individual modules where there's a lot of learner activity. And in the right-hand side of this particular screen, there's actually a scrolling activity window, so that if there are 1,000 learners in a particular course, you will actually see a live feed of what's going on in that course throughout your entire community. So this is just an area that learning platforms are actually addressing, how to make people feel more connected and as part of a community. So now what we're going to focus on is the future of learning platforms. And when I say future, I'm talking about 2022. I'm not talking about something in 10 years' time. But we do believe that learning platforms are going to become more and more proactive to both the learners and the instructors. And one area that they're going to provide assistance is in recommendations. So the general idea is that learners are going to be able to set a series of learning goals. And a goal could be something related to a job. So for example, if I'm in a business and I want to become a graphic designer, I should be able to go into my dashboard and say, one learning goal I have is I want the job title of graphic designer. If you're in more a K through 12 environment, then I might want to say, one of my learning goals is to get really good at Pennsylvania biology grade 1, because most of the states have standards which actually set a set of competencies that you should get good at. But also in university, you might have a career path where I'm studying graphic design, and one of my learning goals is I want to achieve the career of a graphic designer. But regardless, the idea is that there's a series of goals that each user can have. And it's also possible that a mentor or an instructor might assign you goals. So we're not talking just about learners adding their own goals, but we want other people sometimes to set aside goals. Now, all of these goals have a set of competencies associated with them. So once we actually set a goal, and I know the competencies of the goal, I can look at that detailed competency map that I mentioned in the previous part, in the present of learning platforms, and I can figure out your strengths and weaknesses, and I can start adding recommendations based on the competencies that you have yet to master. In addition, there's also the ability to pause a goal, and obviously there's the ability to complete a goal, at which point some automation rules might trigger. So here's an example of a learning goal, like I want to become a digital marketing manager, which is a job. So in the future of learning platforms, you'll be able to set up a series of competencies associated with that particular job. And if you then add that job as a learning goal, now the system knows here are the competencies you want to get good at, and here are the competencies that you don't currently have, and then make some recommendations. So here's an example about how recommendations are going to surface. So I want you to imagine that you log in, you're on your learner dashboard, you can see the courses that you're enrolled in, and right under them, you can see the goals that are currently active. And then under then, you're going to see a set of recommendations associated with those goals. So for example, let's just say that you've got a goal and you want to become a graphic designer. One of the competencies associated with graphic designer that you haven't yet mastered is designing logos. And then there's a really good video in the resources library, which is aligned with how to build logos. So at that point, you can clearly see that we can generate that recommendation automatically. It might say, this is a 4-star rating resource. We recommend you watch this video because it can help you with the competency of designing logos. And at that point, you could either click on it and watch the video, or you could dismiss it, in which case maybe you'll come back to it later on. And one of the nice things about a learning platform is that if you watch the video and then later on your competency for that particular measurement goes up, then we can deduce that there's a correlation between people who watch that video and people who get better at that particular competency, at which point we might actually start recommending it more frequently. So just to recap, we've got learning goals. Learning goals show you the overall mastery of all the competencies associated with that goal. and then the recommendations are then triggered based on your goals. And it's a common question to ask, well, how can you control that recommendations engine? So what we're going to provide is a panel which allows you to check the boxes. Very, very simple. So I can say, hey, if there are highly rated resources that are videos in your business library, then we want the recommendation engine to recommend those resources. We might also say if there are highly rated courses in your site or maybe other sites, we're going to start automatically recommending those courses. So if you're in a school district, for example, and you've got courses on mathematics that are really popular, then if a student's learning goal involves mathematics, we can start recommending the courses in your school to take. And there are schools in Sweden called knowledge schools that work very similarly to this. But it's not just related to materials. We might automatically recommend that you start socially networking with other experts who are experts in those competencies. Or we might recommend that you start joining social learning groups associated with those competencies. So it's not just about materials. We can recommend people to interface with or groups to join. And then last but not least, we're a big fan of making our platform open. So sophisticated businesses or universities can plug in their own recommendations engine. Then our recommendations engine will actually use APIs to get custom recommendations based on a third-party engine. So it's not just a closed system, it's actually fairly open. So as a result of this, when you've got the learning goals and you've got these recommendations, now a student can click on a learning goal and they can see a learning goal dashboard, which is a very cool idea. So for example, let's just say I'm at a business and one of my learning goals is graphical designer, and I'm 78% towards completing that goal. If I click on that goal, what you'll be able to see is all the competencies associated with that goal and your current level of mastery. You'll be able to see the status. So like I'm 78% completed for this particular goal. You can see completion over time, which is very rewarding. So I can see, hey, in the last 3 weeks, I went up 27% towards this goal. But there are also other tabs. So for those of you with eagle eyes, you'll be able to click on resources and see the recommended resources for this area. You'll be able to click on news and see a news feed so that everyone has this particular goal can see up-to-date news. There'll also be a gamified Q&A forum. So we want everyone with the same kind of goals to be able to post questions and get answers to those questions from within the shared community. So we definitely see goals as being a great way to encourage community interaction. And that Q&A will be gamified. So if you post a lot of questions, every time you post a question, you get points. If you answer and it gets a high rating, you get points for contributing, and there'll be a leaderboard. And we have definitely noticed that gamification and leaderboards is a really good way to encourage people to contribute to communities. And then last but not least, you'll be able to click a pop quiz, measure those competencies again, and the pop quiz will add to the measurements and increase your mastery. Now, I do want to mention that this is, of course, focused on learning goals, but these intelligent learning platforms will also provide predictive analysis on where grades are going. They can automatically detect at-risk students. They can automatically recommend resources if you're building a brand new course. So I just focused on the learning goal part of it, but there's a lot more that these intelligent learning platforms are going to provide. And then last but not least, at the end, I do want to say that we've just kind of scratched the surface of where these intelligent learning platforms are going. Everything that I'm going to show you is going to be part of the Cypher learning platforms, Neo and Matrix, towards the beginning of next year. So this is not long-term stuff. We're talking about stuff that's going to be released probably very early 2022. But we definitely believe in voice control. So I want to be able to talk to my learning platform. I want my learning platform to talk back to me and say, hey, Graham, I've got a new recommendation. Do you want to hear it? I just love that idea. And also integrating with augmented reality. So more and more learning experiences are going to be powered by augmented reality and virtual reality. And that's going to be a really critical point of all these future learning platforms. So I really hope you enjoyed my presentation about the past, present, and future of learning platforms. I've provided here a little link to cypherlearning.com if you want to learn more, and my email address. But at this point, I've set aside about 5 minutes or so to answer any questions. So now I'm going to look in the chat window, and I'm going to attempt to answer some of these questions. So one of the questions is, can we implement the system in a local school? And the answer is yes. We've got schools and school districts and universities and businesses all over the world. We're in 23 countries right now, well, offices in 23 countries. And this is specifically designed to be used in things like K through 12 schools. And in fact, some of the senior people in our company are people with an actual EdTech background in K through 20. Another question is, let's see, is it well suited for educations in various different countries? Absolutely. We've got important customers all over the world, including Philippines, Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, Malaysia, obviously in the United States, various countries throughout Europe. So everything that we're doing is designed to work in multi-language, multicultural situations. You know, our platform is available in 40 languages, including right to left. We do automatic language translation within forums. So you could be in Indonesia, post a question in Indonesian and get an answer back in Swedish. And all of that works totally seamlessly. And we have built-in competency maps from countries like the Brazil and the Philippines. So we do everything that we can to make this work really well internationally. We've got another question. I've been using Matrix LMS, and are these screens, are these the ones, or are you recommending something else? So everything that I've showed you is going to be built into our platform through our App Center. So this is not a new product that we're releasing. What we're saying is, if you're using a platform like Neo at K through 20 or Matrix, then soon there's going to be a new app in our App Center, probably called Skills Development. We haven't finalized that. And when you install it, learning goals and recommendations and everything I've shown you in the future then automatically just surfaces within your learning platform. Another question is, do we have any plan to work in African countries? And the answer is yes, we're already doing that. We've got a team of people out in that particular area who are working with countries in Africa as well as the Middle East. So, so absolutely, we work worldwide. Last couple of questions. One, somebody says, I want to use the technology for competency assignment in pharmaceutical industry. This is perfectly suited for that. There's nothing very specific, domain specific to the functionality. It could be used in banking, finance, pharmaceuticals, you know, dog training. It really doesn't make any difference. We have one last question. How can I connect with you? If you look on the presentation, graham@cypherlearning.com is my direct contact information, but cypherlearning.com is the kind of the main corporate page where you can learn all about us. Another one says, here in Ethiopia, biggest challenge is education, so please think about it. We are working with a lot of partners on big projects throughout the world, specifically related to upgrading information education systems. Like, we're a global learning platform provider for Dell around the world, and we've also got a strong partnership with Microsoft. So if anyone wants to see their local education system get a big upgrade, then feel free to get in touch with us. We have a lot of partners who can help that happen. Do we have any free resources for NGOs? So Neo has a completely free plan. So, you know, there's the premium plan with Neo that has a lot of additional features, but the free plan actually has gamification and competency-based learning and automation, even in the free plan of Neo. So you can go to neolms.com to check that out. So I think we're about the end of the Q&A session. So I hope that was interesting and useful to you guys. So at this point, I'm going to say au revoir from sunny California. Best of luck with everything else in Upstart. And once again, I was really honored to be invited to present all about the future of learning platforms. Take care, everybody. Bye.